I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you. Mm.
Talk about topping up via C. Let's talk about topping up via CU Online. Open your CU Online account and select Transfer. Select Send to any other member and enter the last name Mlajan. Mlajan. Account number 321027 ID 10. Enter your desired amount and leave your Mlaja associated phone number within the comments. Confirm the transfer. Confirm your email address for the security code and input the code received, then click Submit. It's that simple. Mlaja, a new way to pay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is Phoenix here on the broadcast, the Cooperative Voice. Pleasant good evening to everyone. It's good to be back. It's our first edition for the year. And tonight, we are going to be speaking a little bit on credit union essentials. As usual, this program is brought to you with the kind compliments of the Dominica Cooperative Societies League Limited in collaboration with the Credit Unions of Dominica and Mlaja Mobile Wallet, bringing you great financial technology solutions. So today, what are we going to talk about tonight on a Friday night when everybody should be outside? Well, we're prepping you to get outside. And there's one adage that goes, America runs on Dunkins. Well, Dominica runs on the credit union. So tonight, in the very short minutes that we have, we're going to talk about credit union essentials. And joining us on the program is a credit union enthusiast, Miss Ellen Ambo. And I'm going to introduce her in a short bit. But again, thank you for joining us. It's a lovely, I know it's a sacrificial Friday for you to be sitting down for the next half an hour or so to be listening to us. But we really want to get in on the nuts and bolts of credit union essentials. And so tonight, we'll be focusing on a couple of things. We want to know a little bit about the credit union history, about our model, about our philosophy, our core values, and then we'll talk a little bit about volunteerism. And this essentially is the stepping ground or the breaking ground into what we will be calling the public education of what credit union is. Because a lot of people have been asking, you're turning like banks, and how different is a credit union from a bank and so forth. So tonight, we are going to break it down into bite-sized pieces. And who best to help me do that than Miss Ellen Ambo. Miss Ellen Ambo, pleasant good evening and welcome to the Cooperative Voice.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Belfield. I am very happy to be here. And he said, who better? There would be many of us, but I am happy to be the person who can share my little bite size on all of this. Welcome, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Helen, just before we get into the program, you know, Dominica essentially, in terms of credit union penetration, we're the highest in the world, credit union per capita penetration. So, we make a joke in the movement that when you're born in Dominica, they give you two things, a birth certificate and a credit union membership account.
Indeed.
So how has your credit union experience been?
Okay, first of all, for me, it's a lifelong experience and it's a journey. I am a credit union enthusiast, I say, because from the time I started in the movement, I mean, I think my parents gave me my account. And of course, back in the day, it was little account, little monies. But I mean, we've journeyed because we were taught, and therefore the credit union was part of the way that we did things when I was growing up, part of the way that we lived as a community, and it was a huge part of the society. And so my experience has been this, and I have served from the time I was 18, literally nonstop for many, many years. And so I think the credit union has contributed to my own personal growth and development and benefited me too in the sense of everything that I did. Literally, I did it within the context of the credit union mission.
And so people talk about the cradle to the grave experience with credit union. So catering for our membership from the time they're born until the time they die. We even have FBI, which is Family Bereavement Insurance from Cooperative, that helps you and your bereaved ones. You get to put at least six people on the policy and all of that fantastic thing. How is that cradle to grave experience in the credit union movement form such an integral part in how we have come to appreciate what credit unions are?
Okay, so you said it. The cradle to grave experience has literally shaped the way that we think of credit unions. And yet, still, I believe that that is too traditional. We've relied on what we've done over the years. I believe that the movement is in such a good place. The movement is a giant. The movement is a giant. And I still believe that we can harness the power of the movement for much greater good and for wealth creation. We speak about people helping people. Yes. But I believe that we also have to come to the place where we're thinking wealth creation for everyone and not necessarily wealth in terms of boats and airplanes, but that
Mhm.
stability and that comfort and security that people need to know that there is an institution that literally has your back. So we need to, it is wonderful. We do have it, the cradle to grave, but we need to break a little bit from the traditional norms of doing things, I think.
So one of the obvious questions that comes up is, people say credit unions are like banks. You have big buildings, you have KYC, and you're asking you what's the name of your dog and what's the name of your dog's first dog. Yeah, how different is the credit union from your mainstream commercial banks and other financial institutions?
Of course, there is a similarity, and there is a law, and the law has to govern what we do. Everything we do has to be done within that context. However, I think we are guilty, and I want to jump this in. I think we're guilty of trying to model ourselves like the bank because we see them as the epitome of a financial institution. I still believe there is nothing that says that we cannot craft our own path and our own model. Because although we're about financial services, remember that the banks are owned by the shareholders. Credit
Right.
unions are democratically owned and they're owned by members, and every member has a voice, every member has a vote, every member has a say. I think we need to value the fact that it's our members who are coming in, it is us who are coming in and not customers, not clients in that sense. So we are guilty of trying to look too much to resemble the banks.
Mhm. And do you think, you mentioned a very important part about laws and the principles governing the credit union movement. How do you see this shaping the perception out there about who we are and who we've become?
Wonderful. I think that they really can shape the principles, for example, are so fundamental. Seven of them are given. It's like a story. We know it. But I am not certain that we allow these seven principles to dominate our strategies as organizations planning and moving forward. I don't think we build them into the way that we actually operate. For example, let me just give you one example that jumps out at first blush. One of those principles is cooperation among cooperatives.
Right.
When I listen to the radio as an ordinary member, what I see is competition among credit unions. We're competing for a greater voice, we're competing for the market, we're competing to grab people. And inevitably, there will be an element of competition, inevitably, especially when you penetrate the entire market the way that we've done in Dominica. It's 100% penetration. But I am saying we need to establish and find ways to collaborate, to take on one project and to contribute to it as a movement, as all of us contributing together.
Right.
And there are many ways to do that. There is a concern for the community. Occasionally, we can pick a national issue and deal with it nationally.
Right.
There is, for example, education, training, and information. And I want to thank you for this forum. It is excellent. but we can do something that is collaborative, something that is credit unions coming together, cooperators coming together to do
Mhm.
one big thing, to support that one issue, rather
Right.
than be competing for voice and competing for turf and territory, and of course trying to make ourselves look pretty and so on. All of that is sort of like image. We can begin to walk a different path.
Well, and you brought up an interesting twisted, because I think you also speak from a body of members who believe in some respect, some justified, some not. That we may be more in an effort to remain competitive because of the changing landscape. We may be diverting a little bit away from the cooperative ethos, and
Right.
so the my question to you is, pedal back a little bit. What really is a credit union? Because if a credit union is akin to a bank or a financial institution providing services, how do I differentiate it? So, what for you represents a credit union? And tell me a little bit about how it started, and how we are today.
Okay. And so our model, our philosophy has always been people helping people.
Right.
That is fundamental. That is sure. That is something that we understand. So our model, our operating model is actually we pooling our resources together, and then we determining how we want those pooled resources to be utilized, and ensuring that everybody gets a little bit from anything that any extra that we create. So we help people to create wealth. So again, our model is simple. It is
Hmm.
simple. We pool our savings together, we loan to members, and based on how people pay, we get a little extra, and we use that extra to ensure that everybody benefits. It's a very, very simple model. Okay. I think that we can actually use that model and strengthen it, strengthen
Right.
the concept of the people helping people. For me, maybe we need to, rather than see people coming in and trying to what we're trying to do is to design, for example, loans. We're trying to design more and more loans. I hear all kinds of sexy names for the loan products. I still feel that we can do this, fix our model, ensure that our philosophy is, shall we say, is a part of our every strategy, everything that we do. All right. And Phoenix, you had a second part to the question, but I think I lost it in the answer.
Fine, that's fine, because I'm going to piggyback on exactly what you said. Now, a lot of times our model, our history evolves around, no, our model evolves around our history. There are some of the school of thought that what was applicable 60 years ago may not be applicable 60 years going forward. And that as the market space and the membership needs evolve, now we're talking about online banking and mobile wallets and artificial intelligence and key EKYC and so forth, that the model must evolve. Tell us about the business model of the credit union. How do we make, because we don't want people to leave tonight with the notion that yes, we're approaching $1 billion in assets, and credit union has a lot of money. Help us understand about the credit union business model.
Okay, the model is simple and the model itself does not change. How we actualize the model will change with time and will change with technology, but the
Right.
model remains the same. Just like insurance companies, their model is the same. It's a pool of savings. We too are a pooling institution. We pool our savings together and then we utilize the savings to assist members based on their needs. Notwithstanding that, that is going to be the model going forward. It is how we operationalize it, is how we actualize it, is how we allow it to be utilized, how we, and that is what, and we must use technology. So that
Yeah.
is what will change. What will change is how we operationalize it. It was like that back in the day, this pooling of our savings and this lending to people. It was like that when our share capital was $5,000, and when we saved only one day a week and we put 25 cents on $1. It
Right.
was the same model. I am saying what we need to do is to ensure that technology does not cause us to lose sight of what
Right.
is elemental, because the model itself is there, but how we make it real with the people, how we
Mhm.
operationalize it is bound to change. And not only, you mentioned technology, but there's also another big stunner. What about regulations? We must fall under regulations. Laws are created, and we must, as good corporate citizens, we must do what the law says. But our
Let me
model
ask
should
you,
be
let me ask you a
seen.
quick question on that regulation. So, how do we, before time, you could have walked into a credit union with your nene and your power and just sign a piece of paper and get a loan. Now you're required to have all of this information, provide them in advance, heavy scrutiny. How do you explain to the membership of the average credit union? We have six in Dominica. How do you explain to the membership of the change in times and how the regulations affecting how we do business as a credit union?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, apart from the fact that the environment has changed, people have changed. I
Right,
think people have changed a lot, because back in the day, there was a pressure placed on you when you didn't pay your loan. It was a very shameful thing. You
right,
couldn't just run away. People said it, and your auntie was upset, and your nenen was upset, and you, back in the day, there was a social pressure placed on you, and you had a responsibility.
right.
What we've done now is that we've sort of departed from that a little bit. So socially, we ourselves, we've not helped ourselves. We've grown, we've assumed certain, shall we say, qualities that are not so nice. So we do not respect the society as much, probably, as it was back then. And there was a
And
social
here we're talking
pressure
generally. We're
placed
not
on
talking
you.
about credit unions. We're talking generally.
Yes,
I just want to put that out
yes,
there because I don't want people to leave and say
yes.
credit unions
And
misbehave.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. Good.
There was a pressure placed on you, and we were more respectful. Authority meant more to us.
Right.
Times have changed, and we move easier. We migrate very quickly. We disappear better than we could before. But I'm saying, even if we're changing with the time, one of the responsibilities of the movement, of course, is to try to ensure that our cultural values and those that are unique to the credit union are taught over and over and over again. Let us reinforce them over and over and over again. We have a
Mhm.
responsibility to build the kind of society too that we want to operate well and effectively in.
Right. And the so with part of the regulations because we're regulated by in our case the Financial Services Unit, we have it oversight by the FIU, and we have a lot of parent and sister regulations governing the sector. How do you see from the credit union vantage point? Because here we want to get the membership to understand that a lot of the requirements that you're now being asked to provide to a credit union is not because the credit union want to know more of your business, but it's because they are mandates of the law for which credit union must comply. How do you explain that to the mom and pop shop, the average roadside vendor out there who just have a credit union account, they want to get a small loan, and then all of a sudden now you're hearing big words like collateral and debt service ratio
And know your
and
customers
know
and
your
I
customer.
assess, yes. Yeah. But then again, one of the fundamental principles of the movement from way back when it was born in 1850 thereabouts, was education, training, and information. We
Right,
probably have not respected this principle as much as we should. I remember back in the day, credit unions used to have an education committee seeking to educate membership on issues like these. Anytime issues like this come up, because people don't understand, it's simply because they didn't have the background information. Maybe we should be much, much more aggressive, ruthless, even about the way we educate people and the way we put the information out there, so that people understand that sometimes when the credit union, let us say, says that you have to do this and that, it is because the legislation says you have to do this, and we have to do it if we need to keep operating. But I'm saying we need to be ruthless. Again, I put the blame fairly and squarely on us within
mhm,
the movement. We have to be serious more, even more, about education and training. Education and training should not just be for the board members and members of the committees and the staff. We
Mhm.
should be ruthless about the way we educate. And there's technology. There's technology. So we should spend the time, spend the money, be creative, and educate people. So when these things are coming, we let
Mhm.
people know any way we can.
You mentioned earlier in your preamble about shareholder relationship with commercial banks and membership relationship with the credit union. Uh, we make money essentially pretty much like any standard financial institutions. Of course, the we don't charge as much in fees, very few fees if any, at the credit union. So essentially, the loan provides for about maybe 99% of our income stream. How does a credit union manage its business based on that business pooling model that you spoke
Hmm.
about earlier?
All right. This is a hard one, Phoenix, I must say. This is a hard one. But because you're right. We need to generate that revenue to be able to run the education programs, to be able, like I was saying, to show concern for the community. And how do you do that if you do not want to be too much like a bank and you don't want to charge for everything? Sometimes I think we are charged just for standing on the carpet inside the bank. But I'm saying even if we need to do that, maybe what we need to do is to dispense of some of the thrills. So maybe we need to dispense. I don't know how. Maybe there are certain thrills we need to dispense of. Maybe we don't need buildings that are huge and full of glass and need to be. Maybe we need to dispense of some of the thrills that we have. I don't know, because that is a hard one for me, because you're talking here about how actually do we manage within the context that we have to ensure that our we can afford to do some of the things that we need to do, and we still have to help the member to create wealth. It is a very hard one for me. I think maybe we need to drop some of our frills and fancy.
One of the things we had, I remember post Hurricane Maria, when you had Tropical Storm Erica, which caused damage in excess of 90% of our GDP, and Hurricane Maria damages in excess of 240% of our GDP. In both instances, credit unions were instrumental in providing moratoriums and so forth. Notwithstanding that, some credit unions still provide dividends to the membership. Of course, the ability of a credit union to provide dividend is based on your share capital, your buffer. And so that's why we've been asking membership to increase their shareholdings, because we can't do bonus issue in the credit union. We have to ask members to come and invest because they are the owners. The question I wanted to ask you: what role do you see the corporate social responsibility that the credit union play? How do you see that impact at a national level? We have Grand Bay with there's a popular road march that they had, race. The name is not coming up. You had Central with the sponsorship of football team. You have NCCU with Cat and Slip. So you have St. Mary's with the flower show. You have Marigot with the Mayfest support. You have West Coast. West Coast had the what was that, the 4,000 when they had the water situation in Salisbury.
Yes,
You brought
yes.
out
Uh-huh.
the water gallon, the gallon
Yes,
tank alone. I think it's a
yes.
4,000 or 6,000.
Uh-huh.
But
Some, it was a 4,000, yeah.
right, but you also sponsor sporting event, gifts to social causes. How important is that from a credit union context and from a national context? The impact of the corporate social responsibility.
Vital. It is vital. And again, it speaks to like we're saying, one of the fundamental philosophies, concern for the community. It is very vital. And of course, that is part of our national capital. The fact that the credit union in itself has been able to be part of the sponsorship. Think of all the scholarships that we've given. Think of all the children that we've assisted, and parents and groups in the community and so on. So wonderful. However, I think that while we have six individual credit unions doing different projects in their communities, that is fabulous. Maybe we've never collaborated and taken on one national
Mhm.
thing, apart from the family fun day that we did,
Right.
taken on one as a credit union movement, as a giant that we are, take on one
You mean something
national
like
entity,
a car park, like Villa car park?
or maybe deal with the. We're talking these days about the what we call them, obesity. We're talking about all
Health
things of
partnerships.
health issues. There's an
Mhm.
issue of homelessness and people on the street, and everybody complains. Credit unions have not yet collaborated and taken one
And
issue.
that's
And I
national.
don't mean you have to take an issue and deal with it to its resolution. Issues will never be totally resolved. But we've
Mhm.
never taken one and thrown some good energy at it and money at it and said, we're doing this together. This is the credit, branded ourselves, all of us, the six of us, against this. Incidentally, while we're saying this, Phoenix, something that I have been also thinking about is another thing that we've not done very well is, to me, apart from NCCU, for example, we've not yet truly honored the pioneers, and there are two sets of pioneers in the movement. There are the pioneers that brought the movement to the rural communities. They went on boat with Sister Alicia. We've not yet recorded this properly. We haven't given it a lasting place in our business. Our story doesn't speak to it enough. And remember when the movement merged, there were a series of mergers that brought the movement from 21
The six.
different
Yeah.
rural community small organizations to six major big boys in the system. We've not, the people who did that, who allowed us to make those transitions, first of all, with the initial pioneering, and secondly, for the mergers, I don't think that we've honored them enough. I am not
Okay.
sure that our somebody just enters our office and recognize that, look, we're recognizing all of these people there.
All
These
right.
people are recognized for their contributions. The
A Hall of
movement
Fame.
itself, a hall of fame. Every credit union should be a hall of fame. The movement is recognizing the contribution so that your people going forward, your descendants going forward, can look at the credit union hall and say, look, my mother is was part of this movement. We need to do things like that. So we need to be good corporate citizens.
Which leads to a beautiful segue here about volunteerism. Uh, this has been the bedrock of how we manage and govern the affairs of credit union. We do it on the backs of people's intellect, their time, their capacities, and their sacrifices. How important is it, and how is it that the average John public out there can become? Because we're hearing on the news, we're hearing NCCU announcements, central announcements, mayor's announcement, AGMs are coming up. We don't want people to just turn up at the AGM and say, "Hey, I want to be president. I want to be on the board. I want." How? What would you say to those persons who want to be volunteers for the movement? Give us succinctly what it entails, what are the responsibilities, and how will that impact their efforts and the credit union efforts at building world-class financial institutions?
Wonderful. And that is one of the hallmarks of the credit union movement, volunteerism. And you're quite right. I remember back in the day when there was an annual general meeting, you nominated people from the floor. And at some point, it would even get ridiculous. I beg to nominate Helen Ambo. I decline. I know, I decline. And what we did was sort of bring the thing almost into disrepute because people were just declining. And so everybody must understand that the smarter way to do this is to ensure that we get people in advance. But I, as an ordinary member, I must state to the credit union, I'm interested in serving. I need to help. I think my credit union has given to me and I am able to give back for a while. I may not serve for too long, but at least for 3 years. We need to put ourselves out there. We need to say that we want to serve. And when we make the commitment, we must keep and maintain that commitment. Now, volunteerism itself, back in the day, was not as onerous, maybe, as it is now. Because remember, now you are supposed to know the legislation, you are supposed to understand the regulations, you are supposed to understand everything that CFATF says, etc., FIU says this, etc. It has become very, very onerous. And so, therefore, One of the things we need to do too is to respect volunteers much more than even we do. I think people tend to have a little bit of comments, some comments to make that are not savory. You know, they are not sweet. We need to honor the people who want to give time, who want to give their intellect to the movement. But like I started off saying, I think a lot of my own growth and development, I think I can say that came about from sitting down at endless board and credit committee and supervisory committee meetings and trying to work things out. And you start off not being so good at it, but you develop because you learn from, we sharpen ourselves against each other. And so
Right.
volunteerism is key. We need to keep it like that. We need to keep that concept clean. We need to not, maybe not pay people, but there are many, many ways to say thank you.
Wonderful. And I see we're already out of time. I know it's Friday. People are listening to us while they're putting on their shoes and their dandan and what have you. So we're gonna keep it tight together. But very scintillating discussion regarding volunteerism, because it is one of the things that I believe we're going to have to be uh, we're going to have to do a pivot on it to ensure that we have the right people in the right places that can take the credit union movement to the next level. And so by coming into the movement, people must understand what are their roles and responsibilities. Um, so tell us, how does a person become a volunteer on a credit union, and what is expected from them on day one?
You are thrust into the role.
Mhm.
And from day one, you're expected to be smart enough to understand the issues and take decisions. Because the board of directors, for example, takes policy decisions. The supervisory committee takes those kinds of decisions. What I noticed we've done at West Coast is ensure that people sign an oath, take an oath of office, which is, these things are becoming more and more important. But I'm saying we are thrust into the movement because probably the nominations committee seeks you out. Would you be interested in serving this and that? And you say yes. Send me a bio, and you send a bio. I am also proposing that it is time we become frontal. I, as a member, should be able to call the credit union and say, you know, I am a teacher. I have been doing this and that and so on. I am interested in serving the credit union. Put me up for, we can do that. And then, of course, like you're saying, we hear the adverts from the larger credit unions asking for people to nominate people. Other people should be able, an ordinary Joe Public member should be able to say, Hells, you think you want to serve? I want to nominate you. And the person should be able to call the credit union and say, I think that person is a good person. Could you try and check her out? But too often, like I was telling you, Phoenix, we are thrust into the role and we are supposed to be to get in there running. Okay, we are supposed to just be running right away, and there are so many issues, there are so many things to remark and to think about, and meetings and policies. There are so many issues that it is really very, very much for volunteers. But volunteerism is fundamental. I think we need to keep on embracing it and ensure that we thank and are pleased with our volunteers. Say thank you as often as possible.
All right. And you're talking about being thrust into it, because one of the key things that we have come to realize is the learning by doing. Many times we have people with banking and knowledge or finance knowledge and architects and engineers, but when you come into the credit union sphere, you realize it's a whole new different ballgame. And then as a result, you now need to immerse yourself in the credit union ideology and philosophy, and then begin to make now those decisions based on the information that is presented before you. So there is also element of learning by doing, but you're absolutely right. And that is why we wanted to not necessarily scare the membership into believing that straight into the lion's den that you're going, but also to give them a very open and frontal perspective as to what is expected on you from day one. So
Mhm.
you can, in fact, all of the credit unions do advertise because they're mandated by law. In fact,
Yes,
the
yes.
publishing of the AGM you're mandated by law to put it in at least two editions of the newspaper. So they can come out and they can nominate and they can be nominated as well. So that's very important. Just as we're wrapping up, one of the questions that we pull out: how can, I mean, we've grown. Some believe that we've grown outsized ourselves. How can we as a movement drive a force for change economically? I'm not talking politically, economically, because we're there to ensure that lives and livelihoods are improved. But then sometimes you have cases where you've seen a proliferation of payday lenders, payday lending, and people are borrowing at high interest rates. And then when things get hard and they come back to the credit union to refinance, how can we help people to make better financial decisions, even when the urgency of now is upon us?
Okay, two things. Two things: cooperation among cooperators and education and training, information,
No,
everlastingly. Now, these two things meaning that, like I was saying, Phoenix, we need to take one problem and unite ourselves against that problem. It is very difficult. This is the same Dominica that has been trying to put a trade union congress together for how many years and not succeeded. Why? Because everybody is protecting our own turf and territory. But I'm saying, if we were able to take one problem and rally around it, all of us together, then maybe we would be able to succeed better than we're doing individually. I don't know. I don't have the answers. And the other element to this would have to be education, continuous, tirelessly
financial
educating our
education.
people. We can, yes, we have to keep on training and educating. And I am thinking, even that too, we can collaborate to do something, a universal program, a program that all our members can clue into. That is not me giving information about my credit union, for example, but is that all of our people getting educated on the credit union ideology, the way that we operate, the way we do things, and why we should be better members where we are. Rather, is not to come to our credit union or go to this one and so on. There is enough of this, enough collaboration. Maybe we should collaborate, and maybe the league can lead us in terms of the collaborating.
Under the bus I go. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Any closing comments? Any closing statements? I mean, we had a very this is not a mouthful, this is a pot full of engaging discussion. Certainly a lot to think about and ponder. And you've given us the best thing we can do to ourselves is to be our biggest critics. And you've given us enough constructive criticism and content for us to know use that to create that pillar that we so love. Any closing comments?
Yes, just that I would love to see us as a movement recognize our strength. We're a giant. We can turn things around and we can turn things over, but it has to begin with us collaborating as cooperators together. There has to be an element of competition, must be, but there has to be a time when we wave that aside and we pull our resources together and go at one problem together. I am saying, for example, even in terms of the law, for example, last year when that was passed in the budget, I could not understand it. I could not understand it. I am thinking there had to be a way that the 100% penetration had to work for us in there for us to get. Yes, let government get a little of something that government wants, but let us as a movement be able to say how you can get it. So we need to be able to cooperate. I'd like to see that. Secondly, I'd like us to really, really, and truly honor our pioneers so much more than we're doing and educate the membership ad nauseum until people are almost feel as if, oh, every time we turn on this credit union, let it become part of the way that we do things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Helen Amber. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had the privilege of speaking to Ms. Amber on the Credit Union Essentials. And again, this is part of our series on the Cooperative Voice. Here we're tweaking with the time to see whether it's better during the day or better in the evening. I'm seeing the reception is great in the evening. and which is causing us maybe to extend our time.
But it's
But
a Friday evening, huh?
it's a Friday. No, I don't think we're gonna ever come back on a Friday evening. I don't think. I think the fallout on a Monday is gonna be crazy on us. But
Yes.
certainly a mouthful, a lot to consider, a lot to chow down on. Understanding who we are, where we came from, what we're about, our model, our philosophy. Ms. Ambo, you've given us a lot to chew on, and I thank you for your time. And we'll definitely have you back on to deal with some more juicy topics relating to credit union. So thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for asking me.
All right.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Cooperative Voice program. We thank you for those who've joined us, to our media partners, Q95 and DBS Radio. You've joined the broadcast. Thank you for having us on a lovely Friday evening. For those joining on the social media pages of our credit union on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, we thank you again for connecting. Again, this has been one of a series of credit union essentials where we're seeking to educate the general public on all things credit union, understanding who we are, where we're from, how we come about, how we do our business, what are the principles under which we operate, and how do we continue to make a national impact. So until then, we thank you. We'll be here very shortly again, and we'll be talking about something again more scintillating. It's going to be all credit union for 2024. And before I leave, let me just tell you that in September of September 24th to 29, we will be hosting the 17th annual OECS Summit, and we're going to bring about 300 people down to Dominica in the Rosa area, and we're going to have a 5-day session to talk about credit union, the way forward, how we're doing our business. So we'll be having some stakeholder engagements. Those of you who have an apartments, guest houses, hotels, restaurants, we'll be contacting you and find out how you can partner with us to make this event an exciting and unforgettable event. So until then, Dominica World, good evening.
Want to send your money to friends and family. Want to send your money to friends and family. You want to send your money to friends and family.